In these video notes, we're talking about classical Greece. To understand Greece, you have to understand the geography. Greece is located in the Mediterranean Sea. That access to the sea allowed them to have numerous trade routes with different peoples and come into connection with new ideas, and also spread their ideas to many other places. So Greece is made up of the mainland and the many islands around it in the Aegean Sea there. The mainland is very isolated. The mountainous terrain, the lack of navigable rivers that you see in like Egypt or China, made so a single large Greek empire never formed. Instead, what you had was individual city-states. Each city-state was its own political entity. Some of them worked better with others, but most of them really just had their own unique culture and political systems. They did mostly share a common religion, though. So the Greek word for a city-state is a polis, and the two most important polises that we will discuss are Sparta and Athens. Very different culturally speaking. Sparta, of course, of the movie 300 fame, was intensely militaristic. It is on the Peloponnesian Peninsula. It is a culture that was purely dedicated to war. From the age of 7, children were taken from their parents and trained essentially till they're 18 for military service. This training was absolutely brutal. Many children died. They were beaten. They were starved. They were trained to essentially be the world's most perfect warrior, and at the age of 18, they joined the army and essentially stayed with the army. They could marry and have children, but they didn't live with their family. They lived in the barracks with the army. All of the manual labor, farming, and so on was done by helots, which were slaves kept by Sparta. So Sparta had a very large slave population that did the manual work, which allowed all Spartan men to train pretty much entirely for war. And they basically rejected anything that's outside art, poetry, money. All of that seemed unnecessary. Each soldier was given enough food for them to survive, and that's all that mattered. So your life was completely devoted to Sparta, to the military, and you as an individual did not matter. Versus Athens, which was a very wealthy city-state. Here is the modern-day city of Athens. At the top you have the Acropolis, which still has some ruins from ancient temples built by the ancient Greeks. They grew very wealthy through trade, primarily in olive oil. The climate of Greece is very moderate, and very good growing conditions for trees like olive trees. They spread this all throughout the Mediterranean Sea, became very wealthy, and they are the center of democracy, philosophy, art, science, mathematics. Many great philosophers and other important people that we'll discuss later come from Athens. And again, unlike where Sparta was completely devoted to war and nothing else mattered, Athens, of course, still cared about the military, but it was much more an open-minded culture. And instead of having an extremely powerful army, Athens depended on the strength of its navy, its trading tradition. Its navy to protect it was very important to Athens. So Athens, again, the birthplace of democracy. Democracy is a rule of the people through means of voting. Generally speaking, it is a rule of the masses, and Athens is where we first see it. And what it meant was all citizens could vote. The qualifications weren't terribly strict by modern American standards, of course. You had to be a male. But as it goes, it had a lot of citizens who could vote. The fact that you didn't need to be rich, you didn't need to own property, set it apart from even early America, where you had to have a certain wealth in order to vote. It was something that the Athenians continually strived to expand, was their democracy. And all of that might have been destroyed. Tiny Sparta and Athens bordered the most powerful nation in the world at that time, the Persian Empire. And as you can see, the Persian Empire was immense, stretching all the way from essentially India to Greece. It was a powerful empire. It was a wealthy empire. Not bad. They weren't savage people. The Greeks certainly might have seen them as such, but actually the Persians gave religious tolerance. They were one of the first few empires that allowed different peoples to worship different things underneath. As long as they were paying their taxes and respecting the laws, you were allowed a degree of choice. But of course, Greece wanted to maintain its independence. And what is going to happen is, as you can see, there are territory that the Persians controlled that were Greek in ethnicity. And some of those city-states tried to rise up against the Persian rule, and Athens supported them. And in retaliation for that, Persia is going to declare war on Athens, and the effect that that's going to have is it's going to unite those individual city-states, even Sparta and Athens, working together to battle a common enemy in a much, much larger Persian force. And it seemed like the Persians would have easily been able to conquer the Greeks. Their armies were way, way, way bigger. A Greek army could field about 10,000. Persians could field upwards of hundreds of thousands. So numbers-wise, it was a massive mismatch. But the Greeks did have an advantage in quality, if not quantity. The Greeks were very, very skilled warriors, even, the Spartans, of course, but even non-Spartans. They fought almost continuously because there was so little land. So they were very, very accustomed to warfare. They were heavy infantry. They wore armor, bronze-plated armor, and they fought in military formations that were very disciplined, called phalanxes. And the whole purpose of the phalanx is each soldier had a spear, had a shield, and they would march in a very, very disciplined formation where each soldier was protecting the person next to them with their interconnected shield. So they marched in these units, and basically they were a bulldozer. I mean, they'd put out their spears, and the sheer weight of the numbers and the bronze and all of that gave them an advantage to anyone who they were fighting head-to-head with. And the Persians, by contrast, were mostly lightly armored and lightly armed. They were built for maneuverability, for speed, and so when a Persian light infantry went up against a Greek heavy infantry, the Greeks had a massive advantage in quality. And so the first time the Persians invade, the battle is going to take place at an area outside of Athens called Marathon. It's 26 miles away from Athens. The Persians land at Marathon. As they are forming up, the Athenians launch an attack that surprises them. They come in from the sides and are able to surround the Persians and catch them off guard and eventually drive them back into the sea and defeat them that way. Of course, an Athenian runner runs to Athens from Marathon, the 26.2 miles, which is where we get our modern marathon from. 10 years later, the Persians are once again attempt to attack Greece. This time, the Spartans are going to fight them at the Battle of Thermopylae, famously, which ultimately ends in a defeat for the Greeks, but it stalls the Persians long enough for the Athenian navy to defeat the Persians. Of course, Leonidas is the leader of the Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae, and ultimately they're able to defeat the Persians, and Greece is able to maintain its